The Vietnam War, one of the most controversial conflicts in American history. It lasted nearly 2 decades and left deep scars across 2 nations. But how did the United States actually fight this war? What tactics did it use in the jungles of Southeast Asia? And why, despite all its military power, did it fail to defeat the enemy? In this video, we break down the major tactics the United States used during the Vietnam War, from air power to counterinsurgency, to understand how America fought and why it didn't win. The core American strategy in Vietnam was known as attrition. Led by General William Westmoreland, the idea was simple: kill more enemy troops than they can replace. The United States believed that superior firepower and technology would eventually wear down the North Vietnamese army and Viet Cong. This meant body count became the key measure of success, not territory gained, but how many enemy soldiers were killed. But this approach failed to account for the North's determination, its deep local support, and the guerrilla tactics that blurred the lines between civilian and combatant. From 1965 to 1968, the United States launched Operation Rolling Thunder, a massive bombing campaign against North Vietnam. Thousands of tons of bombs were dropped each week, aiming to destroy enemy supply lines, morale, and infrastructure. Alongside this, B-52 bombers conducted carpet bombing campaigns in rural areas, while fighter jets targeted jungle trails and suspected hideouts. The United States also deployed napalm, a fiery gel that stuck to anything it touched, and Agent Orange, a defoliant used to destroy forest cover and crops. These tactics caused widespread destruction and human suffering, but they failed to break the enemy's will to fight. Instead, they often turned the local population against the Americans. Vietnam is sometimes called the helicopter war. The United States relied heavily on air mobility, using UH-1 Huey helicopters to move troops quickly in and out of combat zones. This tactic allowed the United States to launch search and destroy missions, surprise attacks deep into Viet Cong territory. The idea was to locate enemy fighters, call in air or artillery support, and eliminate them. While this gave the United States incredible mobility, it also meant they couldn't hold territory. Troops would fight, then withdraw, leaving villages vulnerable to Viet Cong return. To support infantry operations, the United States established fire bases, small outposts armed with heavy artillery. From these positions, 155mm howitzers could pound enemy positions for miles around. These fire bases acted like forts in hostile territory, supporting ground troops and defending strategic points. But they were also vulnerable to ambushes, mortar attacks, and sieges, such as the infamous Siege of Khe Sanh in 1968. In the dense river networks of southern Vietnam, the United States Navy fought a different kind of battle. Using brown water Navy patrol boats, they tried to control rivers and canals, intercepting enemy supply movements. Riverine forces carried out search and destroy missions in the Mekong Delta, supported by Navy SEALs and South Vietnamese troops. These tactics disrupted Viet Cong movement, but navigating swampy terrain and dense foliage made it difficult to maintain control. Not all tactics were military. Some aimed to win the hearts and minds of the Vietnamese people. The Strategic Hamlet Program, launched in 1962, sought to relocate rural villagers into fortified settlements, cutting them off from Viet Cong influence. It was part of a broader effort known as pacification, which combined military force with political and economic aid, but the program backfired. Forced relocations bred resentment, and corruption undermined trust. Instead of turning villagers against the Viet Cong, it often pushed them closer. Behind the scenes, the CIA ran a secretive campaign known as the Phoenix Program. Its goal was to identify and eliminate the Viet Cong leadership through infiltration, surveillance, and, targeted assassinations. Working with South Vietnamese forces, the program claimed to have neutralized thousands of Viet Cong operatives, but it also faced criticism for torture, false accusations, and civilian deaths, raising, serious ethical questions about the U.S. presence in Vietnam. By the late 1960s, the war had dragged on with no clear victory in sight. Under President Richard Nixon, the United States shifted tactics again, through a policy called Vietnamization. This meant gradually withdrawing U.S. troops, while increasing aid and training for the Army of the Republic of Vietnam, or ARVN. The goal was to hand over the fighting to the South Vietnamese, while still providing air support and logistics. But the ARVN lacked the training, leadership, and morale to fight the North alone. When US forces finally left in 1973, the South began to collapse. While the United States used modern warfare, its enemy, the Viet Cong, used guerrilla tactics. They moved silently through jungles, struck suddenly, then disappeared. They used booby traps, tunnel networks, and civilian camouflage to avoid direct confrontation. The United States struggled to fight an enemy it couldn't always see, on terrain it didn't fully understand, among a people whose support was split. No tactic, no matter how powerful, could overcome the deeper political and cultural complexities on the ground. The Vietnam War showed that military power alone is not enough. Despite superior weapons, manpower, and money, the United States couldn't win a war fought in the shadows, against a deeply motivated enemy with local support. The tactics were bold, often brutal, and constantly shifting, but they were not enough. In 1975, 2 years after US troops withdrew, Saigon fell. The war was over, and its legacy still echoes today. Thanks for watching. If you found this breakdown useful, don't forget to like and subscribe. For more deep dives into military history, check out our other videos on the Vietnam War and Cold War conflicts.